Good evening, Steeler fans. Welcome to another Wednesday night here on Behind the Steel Curtain Radio. It's Wednesday night. It's time again for the Curtain Call podcast. I'm Geoffrey Benedict. Here with me, as always, Shannon White. Shannon, how you doing?
I'm doing all right this evening, GB. How about you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. You sound a little under the weather.
Yes, I am a little bit. Yes.
All right. So we'll get a little bit more of a subdued Shannon tonight. Hopefully not get him too riled up. But tonight we're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers coaching staff. Tonight we're digging into the coaching staff. This first half of the show, we're going to try and focus on the defense. You want to hear about the offense? Stick around for later. We'll be talking about them too. One thing I found interesting, Shannon, looking through the defensive coaches, is beyond Terrell Austin, they have 5 position coaches listed, 5 guys with a position that they coach listed next to them. 3 of them are linebackers. You have Carl Dunbar on defensive line, Grady Brown in the secondary. You have Brian Flores, who is listed as a linebackers coach, Jerry Olsavsky listed as an inside linebackers coach, and Denzel Martin listed as an outside linebacker assistant coach. Now, Shannon, is TJ Watt that hard to keep up with that they need 3 coaches to coach the Steelers linebackers? What's going on there?
Actually, as we was talking before the show, it's crazy how small the coaching staff is for the Steelers compared to, if you look at all these other teams, they've got an assistant to the assistant, and watching,
they got the guy that hits play. On the button in the film room, and they got another guy here that pauses it. Like I know it's like huge. You got assistants and interns everywhere.
You look at the like on Hard Knocks. I always like to kind of see how other organizations are behind the scenes. Of course, we've never got to see the Steelers, and I know they don't want to be on Hard Knocks, but just the teams we've witnessed, there's been a lot of variety there. Like the Detroit Lions, they had a good sized coaching staff. But the Cowboys was bigger than theirs. I mean, their team picture, they had a team picture just for the coaches.
Yep.
So, like I said, the Steelers, it'd be like, you could take it with your cell phone. So it's
a backyard barbecue.
Exactly. It's totally different. But I think it's obvious. We all thought Brian Flores would be the pass rush coordinator, which I think that he did a good job when he had Watt, where, they have to have him. He's that critical for that pass rush, but he didn't blitz as much as I thought. He didn't do some of the zero coverages and stuff that he likes to do, but I don't think he felt comfortable with the secondary to hold up in a lot of those situations.
Yeah.
But we see the variety as the season went on, and we love Jerry O. Olsavsky's he was just a tough as nails glue guy like Robert Spillane. And, and he had that, he was a quality backup. You could count on him. And I think that he really connects with guys like Spillane and Mark Robinson. So I'm really glad that they have him, to not only coach him, but to provide that insight and that experience that he had as a guy who was, not prototypical size, speed, strength. So I've been happy with the Steelers defensive coaches, pretty much, because as we've said, Tomlin's really kind of the head defensive coordinator, if we're being honest.
Well, yeah, like if you want to, you can kind of break it down. Like Brian Flores, front 7 pass rush type of coordinator, Terrell Austin, coverage coordinator, Mike Tomlin, defensive guy. He's the guy, but he always talks about it. They're in the room. Everyone gets a say. He wants to work with everyone. He wants to understand, hey, what do you think this group is capable? How would they play best to their strengths? And then we're going to work it together and try and come up with the plan that is the best for the whole defense. That's everyone involved. And I think Mike Tomlin, much more than a defensive coordinator, is the overarching philosophy guy, whereas like Terrell Austin might be designing the schemes, designing that, but in that regard, if you're hearing from Brian Flores and Terrell Austin, maybe maybe Tomlin is the right person to call the defense. Like, I don't know. I find the defense very interesting, how the Steelers do it as kind of a group almost effort with a very small number of guys, and everyone's hand is in the pile. I think it works.
I think that I would like to see them be a little more scheme dependent and less superstar dependent. Because those injuries can happen.
Yeah.
It's inevitable, especially on defense. And, we've seen it when Hayward's out for any, the defense ain't as good. When, say it's Highsmith, say it's Fitzpatrick. But, with Watts out, it's, they've won one game ever when he's not played at least 70% or whatever. I'd like to see them get to where, but they need more depth. Obviously, if they have better quality depth and a stronger secondary, I think that they can do that, because we know that Tomlin is a good defensive coach. We know Flores, what he can do. I know that they can, if they have the horses, they can make this run. But they've been top heavy on both sides of the ball for a while. Either they're good on offense and they're not as good on defense, or vice versa. But they've also been like, we got 3 or 4 stars, and then we got some areas that ain't quite up to snuff. And if you watch the teams that's in the Super Bowl, especially the Eagles, I mean, they do not have a weak spot. I mean, they are solid across the board, and they go too deep everywhere. And that's just really, really impressive. Now, they also have Hurts on his rookie deal, and and then he's turning it into being, he's not that upper echelon elite quarterback yet, but he's right there. I mean, he's in the MVP running, so he's had an incredible season, and so it's all coming together for them. And but that's the model I'd like to see the Steelers look at, and the coaches matter. I mean, we've seen that. That's why we just seen what Denver Broncos did and give up to get Sean Payton. They're tired of messing around. They ain't playing around anymore. They realized to make that whole Russell Wilson investment worth it, they got to get a coach.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me because the Denver situation, it's going to be great to watch, because Russell Wilson never had a real offensive guru type of coach. Never had that guy, and now he's going to. It's going to be very interesting to see. That's a lot is going to be riding on that connection between Peyton and Russell. It'll be Russell Wilson. It'll be really interesting to see how that works out. We had a comment from Jennifer in our live chat here. I loved how Kenny Pickett said he learned a lot from Flores. There was an article, Kenny Pickett was talking about how he would pick Brian Flores' brain about what the defense is doing and what they're trying to do and all that stuff. It's very interesting to me. Like they go straight across the board. And I love the idea that Kenny Pickett would go, to the defensive coaches and be like, look, what are they doing here? And you've got a guy who really gets, how pressure works, how defensive works with pressure at the level Brian Flores has shown he gets. That's really valuable. I wanted to put that up there.
Well, I think go ahead. One thing a really good defensive coordinator, like a Brian Flores does, is they create mass confusion. And it's really simple. I mean, it looks really intricate, and everybody has to do their jobs, and there's 11 moving pieces, but it really comes down to causing confusion. And if you can cause confusion for the offense, especially the quarterback, for a couple of seconds, your pass rush usually will get there. If you've got that talent, that quality. So to me, that shows that Pickett, a level of maturity you usually don't see in a rookie quarterback. I mean, there's some benefits to him being 24, and that he's more of an adult, and he's like, hey, I want to learn what his team's trying to do to me, and I can go to a guy who's renowned for creating mass confusion for quarterbacks. To me, that's brilliant. I mean, that's just why would you not? Why would you not take advantage of having that guy on staff?
Absolutely. There's a big question on the defense. Is Brian Flores going to be on this staff next year? I've said for a bit here, I kind of think he is. I don't want to get into like conspiracy theories or build too much on this, but businesses are cautious. They always are. They're always cautious. And you've got a guy who went against ownership. And owners are going to be really cautious before stepping in and hiring a guy who turned on his ownership. Because, okay, Miami, they may have terrible ownership, but that ownership is still there. And they're not the only lousy ownership in the NFL. The NFL has a lot of teams that are not run well, a whole lot of them. And a lot of the teams that are looking for coaches all the time, they're not the ones who are run well. So I think you're going to see a lot of owners shy away from him. I put the odds earlier at like 40% he'd come back. He'd end up back just because people are going to want to hire someone else. I'm taking that higher now. I'm thinking probably 50% odds. I think it's 50-50 odds that Brian Flores is here next year. And every day he's here and every coaching staff position that gets filled is one step forward closer to Brian Flores being a Pittsburgh Steeler next season. What do you think about that, Shannon? Do you think
I'm thinking 50-50.
You think about that now?
Yeah, I think about 50-50 is probably right. Anytime you get a stigma, attached to your name, if what he said, without going into everything is true and it makes sense, then, people, that's not how the NFL wants to conduct business.
Yep.
And so, but the fact that he did say something about it, then it's going to take people a little while to forget. And then the more success he has in Pittsburgh, which hopefully he comes back, because if he's here 2 years and he gets a head coaching position, the Steelers get draft compensation. And that would be awesome if he didn't stay on full time. But if he leaves this year, Steelers get nothing. They just lose a good coordinator. So I would like to see him return. And, time has a way of, healing old wounds that people forget. They're like, hey, we know how talented he is. And, that's something that would have to be discussed in the interviews and the meetings. Like, who I am and what I will and won't do. So you don't even need to interview me if you're ever going to ask me to tank or throw games or anything like that. Certain organizations like the Steelers would value that. That would actually make you more attractive. And if it's one of the other organizations, you don't want to go there anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, really, that's true. I want to get into some of the position of coaches here. Is there any position you look at this year and you look at the talent or you look at the injuries, you look at different situations and you look at development of players on the defense and you say that position kind of stands out from what you would expect a position coach to do? Obviously, we don't know what coaches had what impact on what, but is there any positions you saw that you could say, wow, like this player really stepped up or these group of players really, played better this season?
Well, we all love Dunbar. I mean,
oh, yeah.
he just does a great job. You just see growth from his guys. As long as he has the talent to work with. I was shocked that Loudermilk didn't progress more, but he started out the year with some injury issues and then he didn't get a lot of playing time because they all beat him out. And so this is a big offseason for him. But usually if you get a guy, you give Dunbar a guy with talent, they're going to improve consistently during the season. Inside linebackers, I just think Osowski didn't have a lot to work with. Mark Robinson is talented, but he's incredibly raw. Robert Spillane is, he's everything you'd want, except he's not that athletic. Yeah. But he keeps getting better and better and learning how to play through his limitations. But I guess the secondary, I mean, Cam Sutton had a career year, and I understand it was a contract year, but you still have to execute. He looked better fundamentally than he's ever looked. Then when Wallace first came in, it was an adjustment period because Wallace didn't look real good those first few weeks.
And he was hurt. He was banged up there.
He was also dealing with injury. But man, by the end of the year, I felt very comfortable with Wallace out there. He was what I thought he would be. Very fundamental, very solid, a good tackler. He's a lot like Sutton that neither one of them is incredibly athletic, but they're very intelligent and fundamentally sound. So I thought that Brown did an excellent job with because Pierre's progressed as well, and you have to give Austin some credit there too. Because Austin's worked with him and all, but Pierre has his own limitations. But as long as he can, if he stays focused, Pierre is an excellent tackler. He's maybe the most physical corner they got, and he is very good in zone. And where you take a guy that was undrafted, and he gave him some really good minutes. So I think across the board, Brown did a really good job with that secondary.
Yeah, I agree with you on the secondary. You said James Pierre. I mean, they had what? Josh Johnson. Played against Tampa Bay in that game. Yeah. The only game they've won without TJ Watt in like forever since they drafted him. Like they don't win without TJ Watt playing. That's the one they did win, and they had every secondary player playing.
Are you saying Johnson's the missing link?
If only Keith Butler and Dick LeBeau had known all those years.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how you beat Tom Brady. You got to play someone maybe it's just play someone he's never seen before.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how to beat him. But yeah, like Terrell Austin, Grady Brown. You got Mike Tomlin's involved there too. But since 2019, when Terrell Austin came on board, Grady Brown came in 2021 after the 2020 season. This secondary, we've seen a lot of growth. I mean, who was Cameron Sutton in 2018?
Yeah,
he was nobody. 2019, by the end of 2019, you're sitting there saying, wow, that guy had a phenomenal season. He's going to have to move on. And they were like, yeah, he's going straight from dime back to our number 2 corner. And now that's what he is. You've got, James Perry, we mentioned him. Levi Wallace came in. He played good by the end. Akella Weatherspoon had that short stint. Came in to start 2022 looking like he was going to be really good. And then injuries, he was done. He was burnt quite a bit. I don't know the timeline of any injuries like that. I don't know how it works, but he fell apart. They just kept bouncing back. They had so much time missed in that secondary, and they kept making it happen. Outside of probably their worst game was the Bills game when Terrell Edmonds was out. That was their worst game. But other than that, they had a really good secondary. Did really good.
Well, they didn't have Edmonds, and Kazee wasn't back yet.
Yeah,
and they had Norwood in there.
Norwood,
and so he just didn't have the speed to keep up, and Davis burned him twice. So I would like to see that game if they had their full complement. I think it would have been a much different game.
Oh yeah, I compare that play where Gabe Davis just runs past. I don't remember who the defensive back was. It might have been Wallace. Runs past the defensive back, and Trey Norwood tries to cut over, and it's gone. Gabe Davis is gone. And you compare that to when Tyreek Hill against Miami, where Tyreek Hill absolutely roasted Levi Wallace, and they throw it deep, and Terrell Edmonds is there step for step with him. Hill has to come in a bit, and Edmonds is right there, and Hill has to try and go through Edmonds to get to the ball. It doesn't happen. The great thing was Edmonds actually on that play turned around and at least looked for the ball. Normally he doesn't even try.
Yeah,
but he did that time. Is that our defensive coaching star of the season? Are we going to go Grady Brown as the best defensive coach this season?
I would have to say so. I mean, they led the NFL in interceptions.
Yep.
They got a ton of deflections, even though they don't play tight man.
Yeah.
So that he had them in the right place at the right time. They were fundamentally sound. I think it was the Miami game. They dropped 4 interceptions.
Yep.
Legitimate, catchable interceptions. They dropped them. I think Sutton had 2 that game, if I remember right. So, I think that was something they were fortunate in the second half of the season to not play top tier quarterbacks. But again, you still got to execute. You still got to do, the early in the season when they played your Josh Allens and your Jalen Hurts and those guys, they lit them up pretty bad. But a lot of things changed. It wasn't just the level of the competition. They got Watt back. So, but all in all, I think that, I would have to say Brown was the defensive coach MVP. Let's put it that way.
Yep. Any position you feel like you could look at the coaching and say, you know what, this group doesn't look like it was coached very well. Do you have any group like that on the Steelers in the defense?
Okay, I'll stay away from the offense. On defense, no, honestly, I think that they really did a good job, each one with what they had to work with. Again, you got to have the horses, to run in the race. And I think that if you look at, I didn't see anybody regress because of coaching. I thought that Bush even was more serviceable than he had been the year before. He just has a limited want to, in my opinion. And a coach can only do so much in that situation. Yep. So I'll put none of the defensive issues on the coaching staff.
Yeah. You've mentioned Mark Robinson. I think one of the cool things is how they were able to get him on the field and the packages they used where they really went that 4-4 set, where they went down to one cornerback. Terrell Edmonds lined up on the other side as corner, as like the other side corner across from Cameron Sutton. Minkah Fitzpatrick's, playing safety. And then you've got an 8-man front with Mark Robinson in there, which really creates a situation where Mark Robinson can be kind of protected in coverage. It makes it a lot harder to pick out and say, this is how we attack Mark Robinson, and we get him isolated on somebody. It's really hard to do when you got that kind of formation going on. You have a lot of flexibility there. So I applaud him for that. He was definitely ready to go for limited usage, and his coverage. Even his coverage, you look at in college. Yes. I mean, he didn't have a clue what he was doing. You look early in preseason, it's getting a little better. By the time they used him in the season, he was nearly servicable.
He was at least in the right area code.
Yeah, he's there, and you'd see. What's funny is you would see moments where it seemed like he was like, "Oh, I need to be here." Like it would click with him, and you'd like do that, and then he'd go flying somewhere. He'd like jerk around, like, "Oh man." So I liked seeing that. I think that's a credit. You got to give credit for the development of Robert Spillane. Jerry Olszewski came around, and Robert Spillane turned into something pretty usable. Where he came from, like when he came from Tennessee, he was nobody. He was nobody. That first year he was here, he becomes someone went down. He came in to fill in for them on special teams, and the second half of the season had more tackles on special teams than Tyler Matakevich, who tied for the season league in the NFL. But Spillane had more tackles than him on special teams in the second half of the season. So I was like, he showed up here and immediately contributed. And now he's one of your better linebackers, one of your more reliable linebackers. That's got to count for a lot.
No, you said better linebackers. If you ask me who's the Steelers' best middle linebacker right now or inside linebacker, I would say Robert Spillane.
At the end of the season, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's why he was playing 100% of the snaps. And we got to give Vince Williams some credit. Because when Vince Williams, he surprised retirement and caught us all off guard, he said, Robert Spillane can take up my position. He could be a starter one day. And I'm like, V-Dub, I love V-Dub, but I'm like, no, man. He's not going to be a starter.
No, he's not that dude.
He just has too many athletic limitations, but V-Dub knew what he was talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see the Steelers. And you want to talk about coaching success. If they can somehow put Mark Robinson on that track and in a couple years have him able to play because he's got more athleticism than Robert Spillane and Vince Williams.
Yes.
He could be. I'm not going to say great. Like, he could be a more athletic Robert Spillane. If you could get Mark Robinson, man, he'd be something else. You could get him in coverage to be as good as Robert Spillane. Like, that guy would be dynamic just because of what he brings in the run game. You would have your buck linebacker set, and you'd be in good shape there.
In my opinion, if you watch Robertson, and maybe it's where he was a running back, previous, he really has good short area quickness. And, he's maybe a 4.6 guy, but, he's not slow.
No.
There's a lot of the top linebackers run about that, in middle linebacker right now. His thing that slows him down is the hesitation because he doesn't recognize what he's seeing right off. Once he gets that, I think he can be better at coverage than V-Dub or Spillane ever has been because he does have better movement. And we know that he's so physical and he likes to bring the pain. And especially for a Steelers inside linebacker, he could be beloved in the city of Pittsburgh. He just, Spillane's still living off that hit he put on Henry against the Titans. I mean, you don't forget that. And I expect Robertson to have some of them explosive hits, especially more and more as he gets experience.
All right. We're going to take our break here, have a little commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to talk and move on to the offensive coaching staff. So everyone stay tuned here and we'll be right back. And we're back. We're here. We just finished talking about the defensive coaches. We're going to talk and switch over to the offensive coaching staff. We're going to start with some of the position coaches. The big name this offseason, the big name this past season has got to be Pat Meyer of offensive coaches. The job he did completely rebuilding that offensive line. That great offensive line completely gone. We saw the line get steadily worse even last season. It was just so bad in 2021. And Pat Meyer comes in, new faces, guys in new positions, no one really lining up next to someone that they've been lining up too much, comes in, and by the end of the season, that's a pretty good unit. You got anything to say about Pat Meyer, Shannon?
Oh yeah, just you don't even have to wind me up to get me started about Meyer. When they hired him, I thought Adrian Clem, listening to him in his interviews, I said, he's got that mentality that I want to see, the physicality and to move bodies off the line, and I thought that he could bring that mentality back, but he didn't have the fundamentals and technique down. The guys didn't, he was not a good teacher that way. You have to have that. And there's different ways to teach it. Some guys respond to certain coaches and they don't to others. But I wasn't really blown away by Meyer, but you were more than I was. And you talked about his success in the past. And as the season went on, I seen it. And, the combo blocks and the aggressive pass sets. And, there's going to be struggles when you change your concepts like that. And they were reaching and getting off balance they looked, like the Three Stooges at times. I guess it'd be Five Stooges with the offensive line, but they were, just wide open lanes to the quarterback and falling over each other. And I was like, this ain't good in the preseason, but you just started to see it come together. And I'd watched Daniel's highlights and some of his game film, and I'd never seen him struggle like he did early in the preseason. And people's like, oh, this guy might be a bust. I'm like, we talked about it. I mean, he's too good to be a bust. I mean, this guy is really a talented lineman. Boy, you seen that as the year went on. And him and Cole was a godsend. And Daniel's mere presence elevated Okorafor. It helped him have his best season ever. But Meyer even got Moore and Dotson, even with their struggles, late in the season, they were run blocking great.
Yeah, they got back to it.
Oh, yeah. They was, I don't know how many times you'd see Harris cut back to the left and get outside. And we're always like, he don't have the speed to do that. Well, he does if you block it and you seal it off. And Moore and Dotson were doing that. So to me, Meyer is an incredible success. He's easily the offensive coach of the year for the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very encouraged by that. And I think he'll only do great things if you give him even more talent.
I'm going to bring up a guy who's been here he's been here 2 years now, that I think rivals Pat Meyer with the job he has done. Do you have any idea who I'm going to go with here?
No, I don't.
Alfredo Roberts, tight end coach.
Well,
yeah. You consider, like, to me, look at Zach Gentry, right? First
That's
2 seasons, the guy's out there falling over himself. He played like he played a total of 69 snaps his entire first 2 seasons. 2 seasons, 69 plays. Next 2 seasons, 1,050. Alfredo Roberts showed up, and all of a sudden Zach Gentry could block. Right? All of a sudden Zach Gentry can do things. Pat Freiermuth came in to the NFL, couldn't block.
No.
His first season in the NFL, he was a pretty good blocker. They backed off on his blocking a lot this past season, understandably, with him having some concussions, with them trying to get him out and move him around more. But we saw development from Connor Hayward. Like every tight end he's coaching is doing good. So I think Alfredo Roberts is another kind of like star on the coaching staff here, which brings me to something you have brought up with if you've got your team and you're a run heavy team and you want to be a run heavy team, which they're going to have to. If Matt Canada is your offensive coordinator, you're looking to run the ball. You're not sitting there saying we want to be, the Peyton Manning Colts. If you've hired Matt Canada as your offensive coordinator, you got Pat Meyer on the offensive line. You got Alfredo Roberts coaching your tight ends. Shannon, is tight end a position you could see the Steelers adding another playmaker to?
Well, is my article come out today, and I make the suggestion about we're looking for best player available. As a rebuilding team with so many holes, we all know that, certain offensive line positions, but not all offensive line positions are worthy of the 17th pick. A tackle, yes. Some guards, but there's very few. Center usually don't go that high. Well, then you look at the defensive line. This year, there's a lot of good 2nd to 4th round grades, not a lot of 1st round grades. None of the inside linebackers is 17th, is being rated that high. Simpson out of Clemson, is pretty much looked at as the number 1 inside linebacker, and he's looking at late 1st, early 2nd. So who are you going to start looking at? Cornerbacks, there's 3 right now. I think the Steelers will take any of the 3. But if you look at a lot of the mocks, they're gone by the 17th pick. So just thinking outside the box, everybody's like Jordan Addison. Well, they're wanting to pattern, I guess, around the Cincinnati Bengals rebuilding strategy. It worked, but that's lightning in a bottle. That's a one-time thing. You're talking about a Heisman Trophy championship quarterback with his number 1 receiver, who was the 5th pick in the draft the next year. That's not Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison. We look at James Washington and Mason Rudolph, where you look at, there's a lot of different guys out there that they tried to pair up the quarterback with the wide receiver, and it doesn't always translate to the NFL. I don't want to gamble the Steelers rebuild on when there is maybe better options. So my argument was, look at a guy like Michael Mayer, who's probably about the only tight end that was going to be considered anywhere from 15 to 25 in that range. And he is like a bigger version of Pat Freiermuth. They call him Baby Gronk. He's a little bigger, a little stronger, probably about the same speed, maybe even faster than Freiermuth. If you have 2 top-level tight ends, because we know that Canada's strengths is running coordinating game. If you put 2 tight ends that can block, and Meyer can block, because right now you got Gentry. Now, I love Gentry. I mean, at one time, he looked like a drunk baby giraffe out there. I mean, he was staggering around. he would just get tipped and he would fall over.
Tripping over his own feet, man.
Yeah, exactly. But he has really come so far. And like you said, Roberts deserves a lot of credit for that. But so does Gentry, because he has built his body. He looks nothing like he did as a rookie.
Nothing.
As you said, Freiermuth has worked hard, obviously, on his blocking and his strength. And then Hayward just improved through the season. And that is, I think a lot of that's got to go on Roberts. Yeah. So when I couldn't think of who you might be putting up there near Meyer, but you're right. Roberts did a great job. But all I'm saying is there's the Darryl Washington kid out of Georgia who's tall like Gentry, but he's a better athlete. And he's much better run after the catch. So you got Kincaid out of Utah. There is guys that can be in the second or third round. But I was throwing out there, best player available, if you could get a generational talent who's at the top of his position as a prospect, maybe the only guy left at 17 that you could say that about would be Meyer.
Yep.
Now, 90% of everybody in the community realized what I was saying. You had a few people that were like, well, we don't need a tight end. We got Freiermuth. But what you got to think about is how many guys have we seen their careers end because of concussions? Mm-hmm. Luke Kuechly walked away. Willis for the 49ers walked away. A lot of guys walk away because they realize the impact and the potential for CTE. And if they start getting them concussions that easy, they're like, hey, I'm going to walk away. If you take a first-round tight end, that's insurance in case Freiermuth does go down for an extended period of time or, heaven forbid, has to leave the NFL. Because I think Pickett is the kind of quarterback that connects with a tight end.
Yeah.
We see that connection with him and Freiermuth already. And as the season went on, they started working the middle of the field more. He was always there for him on third downs. That is we always say, a security blanket for a quarterback. And it just Pickett is that kind of guy. He's not a guy that's going to do the Mahomes or the Allen or the Herbert stuff, with this superhuman talent. He is a very talented quarterback. Yeah. But he needs structure. He needs the right scheme. Well, Canada, even if he gets Anderson, is he going to know what to do with him? I mean, he really hasn't shown that.
But you get Kenny Pickett, a big-bodied tight end.
Yeah, if you give him a tight end, he knows that's part of his run game package, and he can do a lot more with that, and he's shown that in the past. So that was the whole premise of the article. But I would like to see, especially if they lose Gentry, look at somebody in those first 4 rounds, because there is some good tight ends in this class.
And I think in that case, when you draft a player high, if you're drafting a player on their potential, stuff like that, even if you're going second, third round with a tight end who has a lot of potential, one of the things you have to think about is who do we have coaching them? Mm-hmm. And right now, you got a pretty good coach. Mm-hmm. You got a coach who right now is showing, man, he's turning young guys into NFL players. Connor Hayward's a more dangerous receiver this year and for the Steelers than he was for Michigan State. Yeah. Like the plays he was making. Fantastic work. Alfredo Roberts, you got to give a lot of credit to that guy. Mm-hmm. And I for one would love to see, man, you give the Steelers a 2-headed tight end with Connor Hayward still as your third. Well, you got to move him around package. Yeah. Be a monster. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you cover that? How do you deal with that? Go ahead, bring in defensive backs to try and cover our tight ends in the pass game, and we'll run right down your throat. We'll run down your throat all day. Bring in linebackers. Good luck. I said something in the article that we've talked about on here with different guests, and it isn't about how many receivers you got or how many of this you got. It's how many weapons you got. Mm-hmm. And in the hands of an adequate offensive coordinator, you can utilize them weapons and create these mismatches. And like you was talking about with Hayward, move him around, H back, put him out in the slot. You can do whatever. And, he come through with some big plays late in the season. I mean, he's got excellent hands. He's tough. He's a willing blocker. He'll never have the size to be a dominant, but he's great at shielding and turning and setting the edge and crackback blocks, inside. And so, if you can never have too many weapons, wherever they are. Yep. Yep. All right. So moving on, we're gonna go to Eddie Faulkner, running backs coach. I you have to say he's done a solid job. Obviously, he's had Najee. I think Najee's been pretty much the same runner. I mean, there's not really much difference there. Jalen Warren, it's hard because these guys kind of hit the ground running as rookies, both of them. Obviously, Najee struggled when his foot wasn't right after the bye week, came back and looked like he was had a new spirit to him, had a little bit of had a little more confidence on cutting and his play. Any thoughts on Eddie Faulkner? I think he's done solid, but I don't think there's too much we can really even judge about him.
I really can't judge Faulkner, nor could, as I said last week, I can't judge any of the running backs. And that goes to the quarterbacks and wide receivers because the offensive line was so bad.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't really know what they were capable of because as running backs, there just wasn't any holes. There wasn't any rushing lanes until this year.
Yeah.
And Meyer, made such a difference in the Daniels and Cole and all that. But I think that, late in the season, I finally thought that Harris looked like a first-round running back. I was like, man, did they miss on this? Because if you take a running back in the first round, he's got to be special.
Yeah.
Regular 1,000 Pro Bowls, all that stuff to justify that. Well, we see the leadership qualities Harris has and the competitiveness and just the quality young man. And he runs so hard to get them 1,200 yards in 2021. Well, this year he wasn't running the same. And I understand part of it was the steel plate and the foot injury. I see that. But he really changed and turned it around at the bye week. And people say, well, it's the classic competition and different things. But he said during the bye week that he had a conversation. Now, I don't know which coaches, if it was Tomlin, if it was Faulkner, who it was, but they had approached him about, running and keeping momentum and staying north and south. And you've seen that. The second half of the season, that's what he returned to. And he even took it to the next level because those last few weeks, he would find congestion at the line and he would high step over it, not slow down, not try to hurdle. He would just high step over, keep that momentum. And even if they got a hand on him, tripped him up a little bit, he's getting 6-7 yard gains out of it.
Yep.
That was just a mentality that we know he has. I mean, he has the toughness and you've seen the talent. Like I said, I didn't think he had the speed to get outside on them cutbacks like he did late in the season. So maybe what I thought was a lack of speed was really a lack of blocking, which we knew that was the problem. Faulkner did a great job with Jalen Warren. He looked to me like he was even better than he had been at Oklahoma State, which I had watched him previous. He really come on and, somebody worked with him because in the preseason and at camp, we'd read the camp notes each day, and they're saying Warren put the ball on the ground again. Well, especially as a rookie, if you do that, you ain't playing.
Yeah, not playing with Tom. You are playing for Mike Tomlin if you're fumbling.
Nope. And I was like, that's not good. And I figured he ain't gonna make it to the preseason games. And then he had to, he made it. You could see his talent, but then he fumbled in the preseason. Boy, I haven't looked it up, but I would dare to bet that if you take total fumbles between Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, and anybody else there that played, Benny Snell and McFarland, the Steelers had less fumbles from their running backs than any team in the league. I'd be willing to bet that. So you got to give him credit for that.
Yeah. You had a total of 4.
Yeah.
Najee had 3 and Jalen Warren had 1, and Najee had about 3 times the carries of Jalen Warren. So they both fumbled something like 1.1% of the time, something like that.
Yeah.
So not bad.
That's important for a team that, ball security was so crucial because, any self-inflicted wounds, they just couldn't overcome it.
Absolutely. Yeah, fumbles lost. Steelers had the 5th fewest last season. And as most teams, they were led by their quarterback. Strip sacks are the leading cause of some fumbles in the NFL.
Yeah.
But
how many did Pickett have? Did it say?
What?
How many did Pickett have? I only remember like 2 times he put the
He had
ball on the
4.
ground. Huh?
He had 4.
Okay, maybe he lost 2 or something. I can't remember, but
Yeah, but not many.
that's not bad for baby hands.
That's less than Ben Roethlisberger used to have. Ben Roethlisberger always had him, but he was always like,
he was doing this.
Geoffrey, he's doing stuff. He's trying to extend plays. He would fumble decent amount.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on the quarterback coaches? They have 2 quarterback coaches. I want to break this up. 2 quarterback coaches listed. Mike Sullivan, quarterback coach, and then David Corley, assistant quarterback coach. This is an interesting one. He played at William and Mary for Tomlin's old coach at William and Mary, where they were known to be the reason people went there. One of the things that coach was known for was developing quarterbacks. Tomlin's old coach developed quarterbacks well. This guy went there, played quarterback, and then started coaching right after he graduated college. He started going into coaching. He was brought in, I think, this season to be the Steelers' assistant quarterback coach. He's been out of college. He was like, it was early 2000s. He was there. So he's been into coaching about, 16 years, something like that. And this is his first NFL job, was here as an assistant quarterbacks coach, clearly has a connection at William and Mary with Tomlin and Tomlin's old coach. But I wanted to bring that up. That's an interesting one, is he's kind of, the Steelers gave that guy a shot to kind of get his career started as a quarterback coach. But Mike Sullivan, quarterback coach, do we have any grounds to judge him? Like, what do we say about Mike Sullivan here?
I think Sullivan's done a good job. When right in the middle of the season, just frustrated with everything with offense. So just started looking at some of the coaches. And I remember Corley, I'm like, who's that? I hadn't even heard of him. And I'm like, he's young. He's pretty young compared to the rest of the Steelers positional coaches. And sometimes that's good to have with a young quarterback. Have that, more of a relationship and a connection that way. Whereas your older coach is kind of like a mentor, father figure type a lot of times. And, Tomlin's not an expert as a quarterback coach. He's never had to be. He inherited Roethlisberger. So I think he really leaned on Sullivan. And I think Sullivan did a really good job. If you watch, I watch a lot of times, like when they, Pickett was just throwing interceptions left and right early in the season. And he would come over to the sideline and, Tomlin didn't stop him coming off the field and chew him out or, he just kind of let him go back there and talk with Sullivan and Corley. And they, I assume Corley was there. I don't know. He might've been in the box, but you see him talking with Sullivan. And Sullivan was that guy that would communicate between Canada and Pickett. And I think that it's that relationship. That's an important relationship. And you've seen that the way they handled it, it helped Pickett keep his confidence because those passes were being complete in college, but they're just that much better in the NFL, the defensive backs. You think about his first 2 interceptions, it hit Claypool in the hands, but as Claypool was trying to bring it in, the guy reached up and tipped it up in the air, and it got intercepted by the safety. Then the next one, he's trying to throw it to where either Freiermuth's going to catch it or it's going to go out of bounds. Well, Freiermuth got up high and got his hands on it right when he was getting hit, so the ball just kind of bounced up in there and it got intercepted. Kind of bad luck, but it just seemed like that that just kept happening. And but they stayed consistent with him and they let him keep his confidence, and then it paid off later in the year. So I think Sullivan is done an excellent job. And so to me, that says that Corley's done a good job behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think you have to look at the development of Kenny Pickett in the second half after the bye week, really taking care of the football, really being smart, showing like taking it back, being more conservative, and then building off of that as you get towards the end of the season, where he added in a few more downfield throws, got a little more out of him. I think you saw a lot of growth from Kenny Pickett. As someone has pointed out in the live chat, obviously it's the players, right? First and foremost, it's the players. If they don't put in work, if they don't have talent, it doesn't matter. They're not improving. But when those players look to improve, when those players look at a thing and say, I need to get better at whatever, who do they go to?
Yeah.
They don't go to themselves and look in the mirror and say, hey, Kenny, how do we improve our footwork? How do we do better at being more consistent on our throws? How do I keep passes from sailing on? That's what coaches are there for. Yeah. Quarterback coaches one thing quarterback coaches do is they sit there and watch film of your delivery, and they watch your bad throws and sit there and watch your throws and say, okay, what about this throw is different? What's causing this ball to sit? And they come and they tell the quarterback and they work on it. These are the kind of things these guys do, is they help these players get better. So when you have a Kenny Pickett who is developing like he did, clearly he's got somebody. He's got somebody that's doing a good job of being there and supporting him and helping him. So we're at something
you brought up earlier. When's the last time you heard your quarterback go to your defensive coordinator and say, hey, what are they trying to do to me here? What are y'all looking for? When you're trying to cause this mass confusion. I mean, that just shows a level of maturity that, we talk about all these other things that they can grade and measure at the combine, but that level of commitment and maturity is something that is invaluable. And that'll set apart a guy who's going to be, a Kirk Cousins or a Derek Carr from being that next level.
Yeah. I want to get into this. Someone just commented. We're ready to transition and start talking. We're talking about Kenny Pickett. We're ready to talk about Matt Canada. Before we were getting into this, I want to start with this because this has made a big headlines around. It's been all over Ben Roethlisberger's podcast where he had Pat Freiermuth on, and Pat Freiermuth said one of the comments he made was, "I'm trying to remember." Ben Roethlisberger asks him, "What's different?" Right? And he's kind of joking around. Ben's kind of like ribbing him. He's been giving Pat Freiermuth a hard time here for quite a little bit of the show. Right? He asked him kind of almost jokingly, like, what's the difference between like playing for Kenny Pickett and playing for me? Like basically, like messing with him. And what Pat does, he's like, no, I was actually telling Kenny, like one of the biggest differences is we don't have checks. We don't have hots. We don't have these calls that he's making after he goes up to the line. And he's like, with you, it was all the time.
Yeah.
It was all the time. Ben had all kinds of checks where he's changing things at the line. You line up and Ben's like, boom, dude. He saw like there was the face mask tug. There's like a look. There's like a thing. There's all these different things Ben had that if he did, it was changing the play. And he's like, we didn't have that with Kenny. That made the rounds. People were like, holy crap. Matt Canada's offense doesn't have hot reads. Like any offense has hot reads. What's up with this guy? How dumb is he? The thing, I watched the whole podcast because I wanted to make sure like I understood what was being said there. Immediately after Pat Freiermuth says that, Ben Roethlisberger's comment is, Kenny will get there. Right? He's going to learn that. And Pat Freiermuth was like, Kenny's going to get there. And then they move on from that. One of the other things, and then very shortly thereafter, Pat Freiermuth mentions how Kenny Pickett became more confident and more effective in the 2-minute drill as the season went on. And how really, like early in the season, he'd go up there, you could tell he wasn't really comfortable running the offense, doing this stuff when it was more on him, right? And he said by the end of the season, he was getting there. And I think we're seeing a quarterback who was thrust in, wasn't really ready, wasn't really confident with it. We've heard him talking about Canada's, going to him and asking him what he's comfortable with, them having conversations about what to add, what to focus on. I think you're seeing a quarterback who really had training wheels on all season. And I know people say he's more, NFL ready, but a lot of that, he didn't have checks. And if people want to say that's on Matt Canada, okay, You could say Matt Canada's got to get him ready. You've got to change how you approach developing the quarterbacks. Kenny Pickett has to be able to audible out of a play or have a hot route before you start him in an NFL game. Like, I understand that. If you want to blame coaches for that, I understand. But I don't think this is a case where it's Matt Canada's offense just doesn't have this stuff. They had it the year before. Pat Freiermuth had him the year before. Like, he didn't this year. Both are Matt Canada.
I think a lot of it, from what we watched, some of that has to go on Tomlin. Tomlin didn't want a rookie quarterback start. And even though I think Pickett beat him out, played better than Trubisky in the preseason, he never got really any reps with that first team.
Yeah.
So his first reps with Claypool, Freiermuth, Johnson, Harris, all these guys was in the first game he played in against the Jets in week 4.
Yeah, like really had very little.
Yeah, so Canada, that was Tomlin's decision who was going to be the starting quarterback.
Yep.
The fact that they didn't give Rudolph got more reps with the ones than Pickett did. So that tells you that the plan was not to start Pickett until maybe deep into the season, we talked about after the bye. So some of that's on Tomlin. But Pickett, it's hard to give, you can't expect Pickett to be Ben. An 18-year veteran versus a rookie who didn't even get reps with the first team starters during the preseason. I think that looking back, hindsight, I wish that they might have been a little bit more aggressive and say, okay, it's a true quarterback competition. I think Pickett won it. I think he could have started because Trubisky, with his experience, would have been a good backup. Instead, you start Trubisky and your backup you're bringing in as a rookie, with no reps with the first team and didn't have any audibles or hot reads and stuff. So it doesn't shock me that the offense struggled like it did. My whole thing with Canada is his play design as much as his play calling, not scheming guys open, having multiple guys in the same area where it makes them easier to cover and makes any throw to either one of the receivers dangerous because you got both them defenders there. He doesn't do a good job of spreading the field. They roll out to the right and he'll have one option sometimes to throw it or run for, try not to get sacked and run for a yard or two. There needs to be more creativity. We see how good he is as run game coordinator. The Steelers obviously want him back, so they believe that Canada has ability to work with Pickett. Pickett spoke highly of him, after the season, and I think he's comfortable with him, and the Steelers want to give him another year of that and see what kind of growth they can have. And maybe, with having more faith in Pickett going into this second year, we'll see a little bit more of a modern NFL passing attack. That's what we got to hope for. Because I believe that Ben's success was when he did those hot reads and all. He checked out of Canada's calls, and that's why the Steelers had the success they did have. Because the offense looked incredibly similar with Trubisky and Pickett this year at the beginning, even though they have mobility and they had a better offensive line and everything else, the offense still looked the same. So that tells me that's Canada's offense. And, he was needing those players that they brought in to give him the things that supposedly he was missing. It took them, good part of the season before they hit their stride. But, I'm still holding that hope. I don't have a lot of faith. I think Canada puts a ceiling on what they'll be able to accomplish as a passing offense next year. I think there'll be improvement, but I do think he sets a ceiling that until they bring in a passing game coordinator, they're not going to get past.
Okay. I'm not going to disagree with you. I do. Matt Canada's passing game is not why he's here. Yeah. In my mind, he is here. Same reason Pat Meyer came in. The Steelers had an idea that they wanted to change how they run the ball. They wanted to come in and be able to run the ball with their next quarterback and not do what they did with Ben. The offense the last couple of years with Ben, even going back, you go back to 2017, 2018, and you look at what Ben Roethlisberger did, how many times he threw the ball. You can't go to a rookie quarterback and be like, hey, buddy, throw the ball 600 times this season and expect to have any kind of success. That's not going to work. So I think the Steelers really sat and said, hey, we want this different run game. If you look at the NFL, most of the teams that were in the final 8 teams run outside zone stuff. They had something like three of the teams had two of the conference championship games teams had wide receivers run the ball in those games.
Yeah,
like that's NFL. That's there. Kansas City does it. San Francisco does it. The Eagles have done it. They didn't do it in their championship game. But you see these guys that they do these kind of offenses. They run this stuff. If you can't run the ball like outside zone, you're not going to run the ball that much in the NFL anymore. So I think they knew they needed to change that. That was one thing they wanted. Matt Canada gives them the ability to do that. That's his focus. That's why he's here. He's not here for his passing game, but I think another big part of that was the amount of youth. The amount of if you take out the first and second year players from this offense, the main players on this offense, you're left with who? Like who? You have Deontay Johnson. Really, that's it. That's the only real player they really had. It was him and Chase Claypool to start. Freiermuth Harris, their second year. Jalen Warren, George Pickens, rookies. Kenny Pickett, a rookie. Connor Hayward's a rookie. Like you have a lot of really young players. They simplified it all. And to tell you the truth, if you're gonna blame one thing for this offense turning out like it did, I think you have to go back in my mind to Mitch Trubisky just really not working out. That did not work. They signed him in to come in here and be the quarterback for the first season of Kenny Pickett. They brought him in here to start, and that did not work. It did not work out. It's bad enough when you have a rookie quarterback and you're only getting 1 touchdown a game. It's worse when you've signed a veteran and you're paying him starter money. You're paying him to be that starter. You've promised him that job, and your team's getting 1 touchdown a game. That's not acceptable. That's bad. And that offense under him, like you look at the drive stats, you look at the numbers, it was bad.
If you listen to PFF, he was the highest rated Steeler player on offense.
Yeah.
And people, like, oh, he was great. He just didn't get a fair shake. I think that Tomlin handcuffed him and just kept pounding in his head, ball security, because he would have a game every once in a while against the Bears when he played for the Bears that he would just light it up, and have 300 or 400 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns. And then he would have the 3 or 4 interception game too.
Yep.
But because he was wildly inconsistent. Well, we all hoped that would change with the experience. But when they handcuffed him, the offense was anemic. When you turn him loose, when he come in against the Buccaneers, he looked really, really good. When he played against the Ravens and he come in that game, he's moving the ball. He's making some great passes, but then he inexplicably throws it to them 3 times. That's who he is.
Yeah.
And I hope that he would, that he had matured, but I think that's just who he's going to be. So even if he sticks around as a backup, he has to, risk assessment. And he has to, because those against the Ravens, they were in the red zone.
Oh,
and it was just killer. It was killer.
Yeah.
It killed him that game.
You take any single one of those interceptions away, and the Steelers win that game.
Yeah,
like you do. Like you want to talk about a game like that to me. That game was actually worse. I mean, if you remove the fact that Neil O'Donnell played in the Super Bowl, it was worse. That was more inexplicably bad than Neil O'Donnell's Super Bowl to me. It's just one was in a Super Bowl and one was in a division game. Like it's a very different thing. But that was just, that was bad. All right. Anyone else we are left? Do we cover the wide receiver coach, Frisman Jackson?
No.
I think he is what's left. He's the last one. Now this one is rough to call because you have a very simplified passing game from a not good pass game offensive coordinator with a rookie quarterback with Mitch Trubisky. How do you view Frisman Jackson? Because this was first year, right? This is his first year on the job or second?
I thought it was his second, but it might be his first.
I mean, I'll check that. Go ahead. You talk about him. I'm going to check.
One of the things that frustrate me, coaches, you got to coach the fundamentals. And I just see the Steelers receivers, George Pickens' hand placement on low throws across the middle. He wasn't doing it like everybody else. I mean, he was catching some of them, but he also dropped some, earlier in the year because of his hand placement, being top hand heavy. Then you have half-hearted efforts on some routes. They know they ain't the primary receiver. Not working across the field to give your quarterback another throwing option when he gets outside the pocket. Claypool was the world's worst at just standing next to the defensive back. I think he kind of did a little better this year on that, where he kept moving. But, of course, Deontay Johnson running backwards, running out of bounds before contact. You catch that many passes and get that many targets. You're telling me you couldn't have slipped one tackle and took it the distance? But no, he couldn't. Because, you'd watch it. There was times he caught the ball, run backwards, got back to where he originally caught the ball and went straight out of bounds. On those, and everybody's like, well, he was catching him comebacks and there wasn't any opportunity for run after the catch. There's always opportunity for run after the catch. You might have to break a tackle sometime. You might have to take a little contact.
Yep.
So there's things that I've seen the wide receivers do that makes me question, what is being taught. So if any of the offensive positional coaches, I'm not talking Matt Canada, but any of the positional coaches, he would be the one I would have the most questions about.
Yeah, I just looked at this is his only season.
Okay.
He was signed February 8th, 2022. So he's been there 1 week short of a year. Not the best first year to have. I was looking up. I'm gonna go back to it, man. That ESPN analysis on the advanced stats. I love it. Where they rated every player on getting open, on catching the ball and run after the catch. None of the Steelers rank well in run after the catch, but George Pickens was the highest rated, tied for the highest rated for catching with a 99, and Deontay Johnson was number one in getting open with a 99. Talk about a very different room. You've got George Pickens who's never open but catches everything. You got Deontay Johnson who's always open and does not. That's actually something I'm currently working on, is breaking down the advanced stats. I did this last year for Deontay Johnson after he made the Pro Bowl, and I was like, I can't believe he made the Pro Bowl. Then this year, going to show basically the same player he was last season. Just didn't score touchdowns really, and I have a hard time judging anything from the wide receivers. I still don't know who Deontay Johnson is. We still don't know if this guy, like, what kind of receiver he is. We know he gets open, but man, it's time to do a little more than 6 yards a target. If you're always open, you should be doing a little better than that. I don't know. I want to see. I think this is one of those seasons that you really should see growth from these wide receivers, and you really should see growth from the quarterback, and we really should see a much better scheme, a much more from the passing game than we saw this year. If we come out next year and Matt Canada has better success in the passing game, we can say, okay, yeah, maybe you overreacted and oversimplified, for the first year quarterback, maybe screwed things up, and now you're showing you can actually do the job at a competent level. I don't expect we're going to see him doing this and think, wow, that's a top, that's Andy Reid out there. That's not going to be the case. But, this is a big chance for this offensive coaching staff to say, hey, Kenny Pickett's going to be better. George Pickens is going to learn how to run routes. Deontay Johnson, maybe improve. It'd be nice. But man, that's the big question mark going into next season, because if the run game is the same, It's going to be all in the passing game for this offense to improve.
To me, if you look at one guy on offense and one guy on defense that I question their want to, it's Deontay Johnson on offense and Devin Bush on defense. I did not see that want to compete. I mean, I actually was surprised watching other teams when their receiver would get over near the sidelines and then he would explode into the corner and try to break through, for a long game. We've seen Pat Freiermuth do it. We've seen, Harris do it. But our receivers, Pickens never got the chance because everything was a contested jump ball, it seemed like. But he has that fight in him. Mm-hmm. But Deontay Johnson never. The only time I think he wanted to score a touchdown that last game so bad when he caught that ball and he kind of fought and drugged the guy a couple yards and went down at the 1 yard line. You could kind of tell he really was trying to get in the end zone. But I know he's not big. I mean, he's a smaller receiver.
Yeah.
But still, with explosiveness and that quickness he has, if you can surprise the guy sometimes and they'll miss a tackle, it happens. I don't remember him making anybody miss, as far as breaking a tackle. Yeah. And the guy's too talented for me to say that. But I just don't remember it all season. So, they got to find that want to. Hopefully Bush finds the want to somewhere else, and Johnson will come into the camp and have his want to.
That would be nice. That would be nice. I always think back to the days where Antonio Brown was here, and they would talk, and our wide receiver coach, man, I just lost his name, the really old guy from Alabama, would always say, we're going to take him in there, we're going to drill him, and we're going to work out the drops.
Was it Mann?
You could see it. Yeah, Richard Mann.
Yeah,
Richard Mann. And it would happen. A couple years by, players not dropping passes like they used to. We're still seeing problems here. Deontay Johnson, to this day, you see a ball. If he's running, if he's running one way and the ball is thrown a little bit behind his head, like head level, a little bit behind it, he's not catching that. Yeah. It was that way in college. That was a weakness he had in college. That's a weakness he has 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. He's had 4 years in the NFL.
Yeah.
Still drops those same passes. Like, you set him up, do that, boom, throw, launch him 80 miles an hour at his head. Teach him to catch that. Just, that's what jugs machines are for. And I don't get that just doesn't happen.
I think he's
gotten better.
I think he's afraid of contact. I mean, when do you ever seen him get blowed up?
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen him catch the ball, get up near a first down and go down before he took a big lick, where he could have maybe fought for that extra yard and got the first down. I think that it's self-preservation. And and there's one reason he's been successful at 100 and whatever he is, 75 pounds. He is not big. But sometimes you have to give that extra effort.
Yep. All right. I'm going to stop there. Our coaches of the year on offense, it's Pat Meyer.
Yep.
On defense, it's Grady Brown in the secondary. Offensive line and secondary, both of them had a lot of challenges. Yep. And both played really good down the stretch. And stood out. Those two are our coaches of the year this year. And I think, are you more confident with the defensive coaching staff or the offensive coaching staff as it is currently constructed?
Well, because of Matt Canada, I can easily say I'm more confident with the defensive coaches.
Yeah, when it's Matt Canada, as long as Brian Flores is on the defense, Matt Canada is still on the offense. I think most people are going to say defensive coaching they're more comfortable with and more confident with. All right. And you got anything coming up, Shannon, that you want to tell everyone about?
No, like I said, I've just been this last article was like I said, trying to offer a discussion topic and to kind of get us into the off-season mode and what to look for in the draft. So we had a great discussion thread and really good response. and I really do appreciate that. But I haven't started working on my next article yet, so I was looking forward to this, and I think it was an excellent show, and I really had a good time.
All right, I got Vertex coming out. This where Dave Schofield and I are going through the Steelers free agents. This one's about Terrell Edmonds, so look for that. That should be coming out tomorrow. And then I'm working on it. I don't know exactly how soon it's going to come out, but I'm working on wide receivers, some advanced stats, looks at the wide receivers, and really trying to break them down and understand them better, looking at the numbers and where they excel and where they don't. So that's something, that's a project I'm working on that I'm excited to see some of the stuff about, especially with George Pickens. I always love looking at these some of these numbers and looking at where they fall and trying to dig more out of the numbers than just what's on the surface. So stay tuned for that. It's got to be sometime this weekend, or I'm gonna have to come up with an extra article to write if I don't get it done. So look for that. But that's our show. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to everyone in the live chat. Love reading your comments, and thank you, Shannon, for coming out with us, even though you weren't feeling the best today. It was a good time. We had a good show.
Mm-hmm.
As always, thank you for listening. Have a great week, and let's go Steelers.